Hello everyone. Today I'd like to continue telling you about how to compose a romantic symphony. In video 1 of this series, I sketched the first movement, constructing a string of tunes and transitions through the whole 10-minute runtime of the movement. That string of music is called the continuity sketch. In videos 2, 3, and 4, I began showing you the orchestration. I showed you the exposition, which is the initial segment where the main tunes are introduced. Now I'll show you a chunk from the development, the middle section of the movement. The final section, the recapitulation, is similar enough to the exposition that I don't think we need to explain the details. So really, by the end of this video, I'll have given all the orchestration lessons that I need to for this particular movement. I want to focus on one passage. It's 32 measures long, and it includes a crescendo that starts small and swells to a huge climactic moment, and then the opposite, the music ebbs and quiets down again. A development section is the closest thing in music to a plot. It often has that kind of an emotional arc. Imagine waves of water trying to breach a wall. You can see the first wave here. It starts quiet in just the cellos, grows, crashes on the wall, but doesn't quite breach it. It isn't a huge climax. Then we have the second wave. It starts quietly again, swells, and hits the wall, still not an overwhelming climax. Well, here it tries again. Third time's the charm, right? The third wave rushes up, more powerful yet, and finally breaches the wall. Huge climax, double forte, big sound, lots of romantic emotion, rage and woe, screaming and yelling. This is the moment of climax in the development section, and really in the whole movement. As we move further into the score, you'll see the intensity maintained for a few measures before it ebbs away again as the wave recedes gradually back into the ocean. Let's listen first to the string orchestra through the whole segment of music that we'll work with today, so you can hear that structure, the musical story, 3 waves building and finally reaching the main climax, then receding and quieting down. Let's scroll back to the start of the passage. Now we know we have 3 waves, the little one, the medium one, and the big one. Each wave is a mini orchestral crescendo, and there are standard ways to orchestrate a crescendo. So let's start with the first wave as an encapsulated example. In an orchestral crescendo, you don't just ask the instruments to play louder. If you want a real crescendo, you have to add to the orchestral power by adding instruments. And there's a special profile to the crescendo. It doesn't ramp up linearly, it rises exponentially and ends on a bang. The reason is that in a linear increase, your ears can't tell when the end is. But if you rise exponentially, then the bang at the end tells you that you've arrived. Here in the first wave, I've crafted a very standard exponential crescendo. It starts in just cellos, very small. More string instruments come in, but still nothing else going on. Right before the end, a little extra color and extra weight comes in. Horns and trombones come in, but they're quiet. Then the peak of the crescendo hits, with a wall of sound. Bam! A chord of full woodwinds and horns, all at forte. And the strings, most of them anyway. You see the string bass coming in here. Let's look carefully at this chord. If this is the moment, the arrival, the peak of this exponential crescendo, then why not use the big guns? Why not add the trumpets and the trombones and the timpani? The reason is simple. This is a small climax. It's only the first wave. We have to save the big guns for the final climax at the end of wave 3. And something else may seem odd here, aside from the score glitching and leaving out the rest in the second half of the measure. In previous videos, I showed you how the trombones can give a power punch if you save them for the peak of a crescendo. Well, I've got trombones here, but they don't serve that function. They arrive early, right before the climax. And there's only 2 of them instead of all 3, and they're quiet. What is going on here? I put the trombones in here in this way specifically so I could show you that they have multiple uses. They aren't just loud instruments. They can also produce a very beautiful background color. Here they add an extra weight and resonance, a little change in tone color, a little increase in the intensity of the sound. Horns are more commonly used for this kind of purpose, and here you see the horns serving exactly that purpose. All I've done is to add a touch of the darker trombone color by making them double the horns. Then they disappear again. I don't need them for the crescendo climax. So it's an unusual use of trombones, but there are specific circumstantial reasons for it. Let's listen to wave 1, the mini crescendo. Now let's skip to the third wave that will reach the main climax of the piece, and let's scroll far enough to see the whole thing. This wave has the power to go the distance. The strings are at forte, the woodwinds are at forte, the horns are at forte. I've got trombones. They're still in the role of adding tone color to the horns, and I still only have 2 trombones, and they're only at mezzo forte. Still, they're adding to the weight of the sound, and with all of this weight already in the orchestra, the big question is, what has been saved for the explosion at the end? And will it be enough to create a sense of dramatic arrival? I think so. You're hit with a full woodwind chord in fortissimo. The trumpets come in fortissimo. And the trombones, all 3 of them, finally return to their role as a power fist, punching you at fortissimo. More than that, these sustained chords will create something like a sound tsunami. Keeping with the wave analogy, this wall of sound is like a wall of water. These few measures will be the loudest, most orchestrally intense moment in the entire movement. And at the end of it, the timpani finally comes in, so you might even say that this moment is the real climax. I saved the timpani for here because I felt like it had a bigger impact. It's as if the listener thinks that this is the climax, the biggest punch, and then the music says, "Oh yeah, you think so? Well, here's one final punch for you." Bam! When you have this much sound coming from the woodwinds and brass, especially the brass, the strings can be overwhelmed. And really, the cellos and basses may be inaudible here. They'll add something to the weight of the sound. They may also add some smoothness and take away the harsh, blatting quality to the heavy brass. But you might not consciously hear them, and the violas will definitely disappear in the wall of sound. I've given them some punchy double stops just so they can make some noise. Really, the violas are serving as a background percussion instrument here. But the violins carry the tune. As simple as the tune is right here, we still don't want it to be inaudible, so I've doubled the first and second violins. In a big romantic orchestra, this could be 50 or more instruments playing this one line all together, so the violins will be heard. Let's listen to the segment, with apologies to your ears, but it is a loud part after all. Now that we've finally reached our big climax of the crescendo after 3 tries, 3 waves, it's time for the sound to ebb away, for the decrescendo. Let's scroll ahead a little. Again, it isn't good enough just to ask the instruments to play quieter. Well, you do have to do that too, from FF to F to MF to MP, and so on, but you also have to thin out the instruments. I always find the orchestral decrescendo to be easier to create than the crescendo. It doesn't matter so much whether the drop in sound is linear or exponential or what profile it has. You just remove instruments bit by bit and the sound feels like it's relaxing. The massive wall of wind instrument sound that made our climax disappears, and when it returns, it's a lot smaller. The trumpets are gone, and only 1 trombone remains, giving weight to the bass line. Then look, the strings are starting to drop out. The second violins are gone, the violas are gone. The next time the wall of sound returns, that wind chord, it's really not a wall anymore. It has no power. It's just a few of the winds in the upper register. Almost everything drops out, until it's just strings. No woodwinds, no brass, just violins and cellos. Scrolling ahead again. I put in this part to make another point. I want to show you that the timpani, just like the trombones, don't have to be always a big bombastic instrument. They're not just for loud parts. They can have a wonderful, quiet, atmospheric sound, kind of lonesome and foreboding. Then everything disappears except for 1 lone clarinet, and then the cellos. The giant blast of sound has shrunk down to a whisper. The drama has died down. We have a quiet moment, and then we're ready for the recapitulation, for the main themes to come back one last time so the movement can end. Let's scroll all the way back to the start of the passage that I've told you about today, and we can listen to the full orchestration. Next time, I'll play the entire first movement for you in full orchestration. Thank you for watching.